The unexpected legacy. The amber liquid in Samuel Morrison's glass caught the lamplight as he stared across the poker table at the desperate man across from him. The saloon was thick with smug decisions, but none worse than what was about to unfold. "I ain't got the money, Sam," wheezed Jacob Henley, his weathered hands trembling as he clutched his cards. "But I got something else. Something that might interest a man in your situation." Samuel's jaw tightened. Everyone in 3 counties knew about his situation, how he and his late wife Martha had tried for 15 years to have children, how the ranch that had been in his family for generations would die with him, how at 52 he was too old and too bitter to start over. "I'm listening," Samuel said, though every instinct told him to fold and walk away. Jacob's eyes darted around the saloon before leaning closer. "My niece, Elena. She's 16, smart as a whip, and," he swallowed hard, "she needs a home. Her parents died of fever last month. I can't take her. Got 6 mouths to feed already." The other players had gone quiet, sensing the shift in the game. Samuel felt sick. "You're talking about a person, Jacob. A child. She's old enough to marry," Jacob pressed desperately. "And you need someone to carry on the Morrison name. It's practical, Sam, for both of you." Samuel should have stood up and left. Should have knocked Jacob's teeth out for suggesting something so vile. Instead, he found himself asking, "What's the bet?" $500 against Elena's hand in marriage. The words hung in the smoky air like a curse. Samuel looked at his cards, a full house, kings over 8s. The best hand he'd held all night. Possibly the best hand of his life. "Deal," he heard himself say. 3 days later, Elena Henley stood on the platform of the train station with a single carpetbag and eyes that held too much understanding for 16 years. Samuel had expected tears, pleading, maybe even an attempt to run. Instead, she extended a gloved hand when he introduced himself. "Mr. Morrison," she said simply. "I understand our arrangement." During the long wagon ride to his ranch, Elena spoke little but observed everything. She noted the condition of his fences, commented on the quality of his cattle, and asked practical questions about water rights and grazing rotation. Samuel found himself responding with more words than he'd spoken to anyone since Martha's death 2 years prior. "You know about ranching?" he asked as they crested the hill overlooking his spread. "My father had a small place before he got sick," Elena replied. "I kept the books, helped with the breeding records. Uncle Jacob never wanted to hear about it, said it wasn't women's work." That first night, as Elena prepared a simple dinner in Martha's kitchen, Samuel laid out his expectations. "I won't, that is, you're too young, and this whole situation." He struggled with the words. "I'll prepare a room for you. We can discuss marriage when you're 18, if you're willing. Until then, you'll help with the house and whatever else needs doing." Elena nodded, then surprised him by saying, "I'd like to see your breeding records, if you don't mind. Uncle Jacob mentioned you've been having trouble with your herd. Within a week, Elena had identified the problem that had been plaguing Samuel's cattle operation for 2 years. His prize bull, Goliath, was carrying a genetic defect that caused low fertility in his offspring. Elena had spotted the pattern in the breeding records that Samuel, in his grief and distraction, had missed. "You'll need to cull him and find new stock," she said matter-of-factly, pointing to her neat calculations. Spread across the kitchen table. "That bull cost me $800, Samuel protested. "And he's cost you 3 times that in lost calves," Elena replied without looking up. "Sometimes you have to let go of what you think is valuable to make room for what actually is." Her words hit deeper than intended, and Samuel found himself wondering if she was talking about more than cattle. As autumn turned to winter, the ranch began to transform. Elena's keen eye for detail and head for numbers started showing results everywhere. She negotiated better prices with suppliers, implemented a more efficient feeding schedule, and even suggested improvements to the irrigation system that increased hay production by 20%. But it was the evenings that surprised Samuel most. After dinner, Elena would sit by the fire with books, not the romance novels he expected a young woman to read, but treatises on agriculture, animal husbandry, and ranch management. She'd borrowed them from the territorial library and read with the intensity of someone who understood that knowledge was the only reliable path to security. "Why are you doing all this?" Samuel asked one snowy December evening. "You could have run away a dozen times by now." "Hell, I wouldn't have stopped you." Elena looked up from her book on crop rotation. "Where would I go? I have no money, no family who wants me, no skills beyond what I'm using here." She paused, considering. Besides, this place needs saving, and I need a home. Seems like we can help each other. You're too smart to be stuck with an old fool like me, Samuel said quietly. Maybe, Elena replied with a slight smile. But you're not as much of a fool as you think. You've just been lost for a while. Spring brought new challenges and unexpected revelations. A neighboring rancher, Tom Bradley, made an offer to buy Samuel's land at below market value, hinting that he'd heard rumors about Samuel's arrangement with Elena and suggesting it might cause problems if word spread to the territorial authorities. Let him try, Elena said coolly when Samuel shared the veiled threat. I've been corresponding with a lawyer in the territorial capital. What happened in that poker game has no legal standing. Uncle Jacob had no right to wager my future, and you have no legal claim on me beyond what I choose to give. Samuel stared at her in amazement. You've been planning this. I've been protecting myself, she corrected. Something I learned to do early. She pulled out a folder of carefully organized papers. I've also been documenting every improvement made to this ranch, every financial gain, every innovation I've contributed. If you wanted to get rid of me, you'd have to buy out my contributions. Elena, I'm not done, she continued, her voice steady but her hands shaking slightly. I've also been researching inheritance laws and business partnerships. There are ways to ensure this ranch survives and thrives that don't require traditional arrangements. That night, Samuel lay awake thinking about the extraordinary young woman who had transformed not just his ranch, but his understanding of what partnership could mean. Elena was right, she was too smart to be trapped by the circumstances that had brought her here. But perhaps, just perhaps, she didn't see it as a trap anymore. On Elena's 18th birthday, Samuel made his own proposal. Not of marriage, but of business partnership. He offered her a 50-50 stake in the ranch operations, with legal documents ensuring her rights and independence. You've earned it, he said simply. This place was dying when you arrived. Now it's thriving. I may be too old to change completely, but I'm not too old to recognize that the best thing I ever won in that poker game wasn't what Jacob thought he was wagering. Elena studied the papers carefully. She'd learned to read every contract, every agreement with the attention of someone who understood how quickly circumstances could change. There's one condition I'd like to add, she said finally. Samuel braced himself. What's that? I want to establish a fund for other young women in situations like mine. Girls who need opportunities, education, a chance to build something for themselves. She met his eyes steadily. I was lucky, you turned out to be decent. But there are others who won't be as fortunate. 5 years later, the Morrison Ranch was the most successful cattle operation in 3 counties. Elena had married, not Samuel, but a young veterinarian she'd met through her ranching association work. Samuel walked her down the aisle with genuine pride, knowing he was giving away not property or obligation but a daughter of choice. The fund Elena had established had helped dozens of young women gain education and independence. And Samuel, now in his late 50s, had found something he'd never expected after Martha's death, a family again, just not the kind he'd originally imagined. At the wedding reception, held in the ranch's main barn, Samuel raised a toast. To Elena Morrison Williams, he said, using the surname she'd legally taken and kept. Who taught an old rancher that sometimes the best way to win at cards is to change the game entirely. Elena smiled and raised her own glass. To second chances, she replied, and the wisdom to recognize that the most valuable things in life can't be won or lost in a poker game, they have to be built together, one choice at a time. As the sun set over the thriving ranch, Samuel reflected on how a single night of questionable judgment had led to the most important lesson of his life, that true partnership, true family, true legacy couldn't be won in a game of chance. It had to be earned through respect, trust, and the daily choice to see others not as possessions to be claimed, but as people worthy of dignity and opportunity. The ranch would indeed survive another generation, but not in the way anyone had originally planned. It would survive because 2 people had chosen to build something better than what circumstances had initially offered them.